We have to start with some shocking revelations that took place in the NFL yesterday with regard to former Las Vegas wide receiver Henry Ruggs, who was involved in a fatal car crash yesterday morning, and the Las Vegas Raiders just released him from the team. So the wide receiver Henry Ruggs was involved in a fatal car crash, who is likely to be charged with a DUI that resulted in the death of a female early yesterday morning in Las Vegas. The Raiders just officially released him, given the fact that it looks like he's going to be facing several felony charges against him. And this was just a shocking revelation and almost an appalling revelation to hear this type of story yesterday. His attorneys came out and said yesterday, on behalf of our client Henry Ruggs, we're conducting our own investigation and ask that everyone reserve the judgment until all the facts are gathered. So for some context, because I had to do some research on this, in California, the penalty for gross vehicular manslaughter, which is involuntarily while intoxicated, typically ranges between 4 to 6 to 10 years. In the state of Nevada, you're prohibited from probation if you're convicted of a DUI charge that's causing a death. So gross vehicular manslaughter in the state of Nevada ranges somewhere between 2 to 20 years in a jail or a state prison. Let me first just say how horrific of an accident this is and how truly saddened and how tragic this is for all the parties involved, but especially the family of the deceased woman. Sending my thoughts and prayers out to her. I'm sure her family is absolutely distraught right now and this morning. And to be honest, I am glad and relieved that Henry Ruggs III himself wasn't severely injured and that he, God forbid, wasn't killed, because it goes without saying that life is more important. And so I'm glad to hear that. But this tragedy and this horrific accident is something that is going to live with Henry Ruggs for the rest of his life. It's going to haunt him for the rest of his life. And when I heard this story, I was heartbroken for a number of reasons. First and foremost, for the family involved. And then, to be honest, I was heartbroken at the opportunity that was wasted away right now by Henry Ruggs, because his football career is over, or at least likely very over. His freedom has been stripped from him, and he's brought ignominy onto his name, onto his family name. Now his legacy is tarnished, and the real shame of this all is here you have a young 22-year-old NFL player whose career was just starting to blossom with the Las Vegas Raiders. He had a team-high 469 receiving yards this year, 2 touchdowns, 24 receptions. Those total yards in 7 games this year surpassed his total output from his rookie season. The 2 touchdowns were the same as his rookie season. And you've got a young man in the prime of his life, in the prime of his career, who's committing the most egregious mistake possible. And the shame is that this was extremely avoidable. It further elucidates and highlights the importance of not drinking while you're driving. And this is a stark and sober reminder that your actions can have grave consequences. The Las Vegas Raiders didn't even wait to hear any more reports out of this investigation. They took the action. They were proactive, and they said we have to cut him. It's as simple as that, because he's facing felony charges for gross vehicular manslaughter. That's not something that you play around with. And the shame also is this is not the first incident that we've seen. Dante Stallworth was a perfect example of that. Dwayne Goodrich, Leonard Little, 3 previous NFL players that were convicted of gross vehicular manslaughter. Now, Dante Stallworth, to his credit, has been trying to turn around his life for the better. But this isn't the first incident, and hopefully this is a chilling lesson for other current NFL players, up-and-coming prospects, college players. Heed this warning from Henry Ruggs. This is a kid who was just drafted out of Alabama in 2020. It's a second year in the league. And for him to commit this horrific, and be involved in this horrific accident, it's a true tragedy, not only, again, to the families involved, but to himself. Because this embarrassment and humiliation is going to live with him forever. It's going to eat at him forever. And I think that it always, whenever I hear stories about this, I always have to take a second and be appreciative of the fact that I'm healthy and that I'm living, because living is a privilege and life is so ephemeral. It's fickle. It's transient. One day you have it. One day it's taken away from you. And it's a privilege to be a professional athlete. It's a privilege to be an NFL player. It's a privilege to be paid millions of dollars to play professional sports. And you just can't squander it. You just can't blow it. You just can't waste that blessing that you've been given, that 1 in a million chance that you've been given. All the hard work for Henry Ruggs to be in this position, and now to let it fritter away. I'm just saddened. I'm heartbroken to hear this story. I'm disappointed in him and his decision making. It was a dumb decision that I'm sure he immediately regrets already, that he will be regretting for the rest of his life. And this was just devastating news to hear. It was absolutely devastating news to hear. The NFL, of course, has kind of been known to be the not for long league, but typically it's not for long for different reasons. And this was just, again, such a devastating story to hear for all parties involved. And it's no surprise that the Raiders released him. There's nothing you can do. And the turmoil that they've had to deal with the John Gruden saga, and now they're losing Henry Ruggs. This is a Raiders team that was on the verge of potentially reaching the postseason. They're 5-2, and their best deep threat, perhaps their second best receiver, is now done for the foreseeable future, if not forever, in the National Football League. And again, it's just a stark reminder of how privileged we are, and to not blow it. Don't squander those opportunities. Don't drink and drive. Just a shame for all parties involved. All parties involved.